Celebrate the incredible women transforming the game of cricket. Metrobank are proud to honour three amazing leaders through the Metrobank Champion of Girls Cricket Award. From Anna Davies at Chichester Priory Park Cricket Club to Emma Williams at Ammanford Cricket Club and Sarah John at Sefton Park CC, these women are accelerating action and driving gender equality forward. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Women's Cricket Weekly Podcast. England have a new captain. It's set in stone. Nat Sciver-Brunt and Charlotte Edwards will be the new leadership group in charge of the England team as it enters a new era. We'll talk about the new appointment, hear briefly from Charlotte Edwards on Nat Sciver-Brunt, talk about the latest round of domestic games, including whether or not counties have lived up to all the talk from last summer. We'll also talk about a new India batter who is breaking records in ODI cricket and what Tier 3 looks like ahead of the launch of the T20 Cup this weekend. I'm Yaz Rana, and with me all the way in part 4 will be Ben Gardner. First up, Lauren Winfield-Hill on what to expect from Nat Sciver-Brunt's captaincy and the latest two rounds of the One Day Cup. Lauren, it was the worst kept secret in English cricket. Nat Sciver-Brunt is the New England skipper across formats. What do you think of the appointment and what do you think she'll bring to the role?
Yeah, no surprises at all, is there? I think, like you say, it was the worst kept secret in English cricket. I think she'll just bring a calmness. She'll do it. I hope she does it her own way. I spoke actually. I did an interview this week about it, and I spoke how her and Lottie will complement each other really nicely. In all fairness, like I don't know who's going to be vice. We've spoken about this a little bit on the pod about trying to be almost somebody's blind spot of what they're not, and somebody else picks that up. And like I said, she's an unbelievable player. She's a very composed, calm character. And I think Lottie's, and this is not in a bad way at all, is quite emotional and very passionate. What you see is what you get with Lottie. And I think they'll complement each other really nicely. They've obviously worked together a bit at Mumbai. So yeah, really excited for Nat and her family. And, you know, it's an awesome opportunity. It'll be interesting. We don't know a lot about Nat as a captain, really. You know, we've seen snippets here and there where Heather's gone down, or in, you know, a little bit in franchise cricket, but we don't know. So we're about to find out.
Yeah, I was going to mention the few occasions where she has stepped in for Heather over the past. And I wonder actually if it's a bit harsh to judge her on those moments because her style of leadership is likely to be someone who leads from the front, who sets the example with everything they do, rather than someone who's necessarily going to inspire the players through the power of her words necessarily. And I wonder if actually something like that will A, take a while, but B, Edwards has made this appointment. She's not made it going in blind. She's worked closely with Nat at Mumbai Indians and very successfully. So I suppose there's that side to Nat Sciver-Brunt that we might not necessarily have seen with England.
And that's the thing with Nat, and probably the questions that we've maybe, you know, asked is that we don't see a real forward, you know, like Churchillian speeches and real headline act with Nat Sciver-Brunt. It's not her way. It's not her style. And I think she's a quiet leader. There's probably a lot that, you know, Lottie spoke about with Mumbai. She's been fantastic with all the younger players and conversations, and how you don't see that as the media. You know, you don't see the conversations that happen in the changing room, in the background at training. And I think that's where Nat will do a lot of her work. It won't be some sort of powerhouse press conference and, you know, some big in-your-face team talk. It's just not who she is. And I mean, don't get me wrong, she can play on emotion, but it's not something that is her natural way. She's a much more calm and collected character than that. So I think, yeah, in her defense, you know, when she's taken over, she's been thrust in the midst of it under quite a lot of pressure in a very unexpected way at times, with Heather going down, you know, sometimes mid-match or whatever. So somebody who's a quiet leader, who does a lot of their work in the background, off the field, in training, she didn't get a chance to do that when you suddenly, Heather's gone down and you're captaining. Like, you can't do the groundwork because you haven't got time to do it. So I do think at times we have seen it, and it's been a little bit frantic and shambolic at times. But I don't think that's a true reflection of, you know, that's Yeah, that's probably not a true reflection of what she's capable of as a leader. And I think you've got to recognize that a lot of her work and her style is probably away from the field.
Back to the county game, it's been racing along. Some really good cricket on the field. More generally, a couple of weeks in, what are your impressions? I suppose last summer when everything was being announced, there were some concerns that counties might not do what they were necessarily promising. And I remember you spoke very passionately a few times about how facilities is a really big part of more investment in the women's domestic game. That's something that's not talked about loads, but opportunity and facilities is something. Is that, from what we've seen in the first 2 weeks, something that's actually happened, or is there still work to be done on that front?
Yeah, I think there's still, like, obviously only speaking from experience in tier two, and obviously the support is different in tier two to tier one. I know that at the weekend we were supposed to, we got up at 6, got on the bus at 7 a.m. to try and make a training session at Hove that then got cancelled an hour and a half before with no reason. We're not sure why it happened. We're still not sure why it happened. But we literally were, like an hour or 2 hours away, and it got cancelled. So we pretty much had throwdowns on an AstroTurf at a random sports ground in East Grinstead. So there's not such a great example of the support and the facilities piece. I mean, I can't imagine too many lads rocking up and having throwdowns on AstroTurf in the middle of a dog walking field. But hey, needs must, and that we did what we needed to do. I think it's different from team to team. Like we saw, obviously Lancs were playing at Southport. We haven't seen a game at the Oval. Beckenham's been used, so I think it's different between each team. I think Durham have done well. They've hosted a lot of, they're hosting pretty much all their games at the Riverside, which is awesome. But I think it's different from team to team. I know you've been down to Beckenham, and that you were a little bit surprised with what went down there.
Yeah, I mean, Beckenham is a weird one in that London's a really big city, right? But it only has two major venues, Lords and Oval. And Beckenham is the third. And I think it's a massive opportunity to have a third really cool cricket venue at Beckenham. It's not there yet as a facility, I think. The infrastructure around it is not what I'd say befitting of the quality of players that you've got on show. And as a result, you probably have fewer fans in than you could have. And I think both Surrey games so far, obviously the epic finish last week, Amanda Jade Wellington to start at the end. But then this week, where they hosted Durham, you had loads of really high-class international players and offering. Surrey obviously have a stacked top six, but Durham have got Susie Bates, Holly Armitage, etc. So amazing players on show. And I feel like, in the same way that with the 100, when it first started, the people in charge of it didn't plan for them to be double headers. It was a COVID thing. And initially it was supposed to be separate. I wonder if there's been a bit of an opportunity missed in not having all the games at the most high-profile venues as you can. Because before we started recording, you made the point, actually, that this is the best time of the year to watch the domestic game, because quite soon the England players will go off and then the county games become slightly more low-key. So it feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity not to have a big song and dance at all the big venues. Look, we've got literally 10 players who played international cricket. This is amazing. Let's back it. Let's give it a really big start. I would be surprised if in a couple of years' time that we'll have games at smaller venues, to be honest, especially at this time of year when you've got really high-profile players. But I think overall it's been good. I just think that some teething problems I expect.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the standard of cricket's been really good, and I think there's not a lot between the teams, which is what you want. But yeah, I do think it's an opportunity missed. Like, this is the blockbuster period at the minute. You've got a New England coach, you've got players playing for spots, you've got really good England availability. This is like the creme de la creme of domestic cricket in England this time of year. And it's like you say, it's a massive opportunity missed for some counties. I think it's important to recognise it's not all. Warwickshire have been at Edgbaston, Durham have been at Durham. There's been a lot of hosting at the major grounds, even in tier two. But I think there has been, you have to recognise the probably the Surrey one in particular, given that they are so stacked with the caliber of players that they have in that lineup, and you still haven't got somebody like Tash Farron playing. this time of year, it's the best cricket. The pitches are class. We've had great weather. We've got world-class players going head to head. Like this, we should be making a song and dance about it. We should be getting numbers through the door because this is the best that we have to offer. So we need to song and dance about it.
Absolutely. On the pitch in Tier 1, no one has won the first 3 games, though Hampshire were one run away from doing so. One of our predictions that is looking slightly better now is around the Blaze. They've won the last 2 games that they've played. Catherine Bryce had an amazing week, 2 for 26 and 54 against Durham, and then 5 for 38 against Warwickshire. Lauren, it feels like over the past year or so, her game in 50 over cricket in particular has gone up another level.
Yeah, I think in all cricket, I think actually in T20 cricket as well, she's improved no end. Her bowling's always been a real handful. She sort of bowls that, those big induckers keep her up. Really good changes of pace. I think her bowling's always been really threatening. But it's her batting, I reckon, that's just come on leaps and bounds, especially like her power game. And yeah, I guess it's she's now played a lot of cricket at a really good level. I think no disrespect to Scotland, but probably for quite a few years, the only sort of real challenging cricket she got was when she was playing in England, whether it be Super League or 100 or whatever. Now that, she's playing in the WPL, she goes out to Australia, and I know she's been in the Tasmania program a little bit over there. So she's now playing all year round, really high quality cricket, challenging cricket. And I think we're sort of seeing the fruits of that labour really in terms of just how much her game's kicked on and just how much it's game situation, isn't it, as well? It's being able to go up and down the gears, knowing when to bowl your stock delivery, when to bowl your change-ups. But yeah, she's improved no end, and I think it's not surprising how she's started the season really. She's also like she's got Notts' top order haven't necessarily fired big, in terms of Jonesy and Tammy pairing. And I think she's been the standout cog in that Blaze side.
Yeah, they look really strong at the moment. There was an amazing game between Warwickshire and Essex over the weekend. Warwickshire were 22 for 5, but somehow ended up scoring 289. Emily Arlott with 130 from number 7. And then Essex in response were 181 all out, having been 98 for 1 and 176 for 5. So if you take the start of the Warwickshire innings and the end of the Essex chase, you have 27 all out. But in the middle, you have 476 for 10. So a game of, I guess, 3 different bits. Hampshire, as I mentioned earlier, they're unbeaten and have won the last 2. They scored 259 against Surrey that they defended fairly comfortably. And yesterday they chased down 293 against Lancashire. Ellie McCocken, 133, not out. She's a 3rd leading run scorer in the comp. She's not someone we talked about before, but only 22 years old, made her debut for the Vipers when she was only 17. Amazing start to the season for someone who's not got a lot of attention before.
Yeah, and she's an awesome player. I always sort of felt a little bit sorry for Ella because as soon as obviously Maya Boucher and Danny Wyatt came back, she was the one that sort of was flicked to the back of the apple cart. But she's a really good young player. And you always sort of felt that if she could get that, it's a difficult one because when you're that player that gets in and out for England players, you almost try too hard when you get a chance because you know that when they come back, you're going to be flicked. And I think she'll benefit from knowing that she's going to open in every game in terms of obviously Danny's gone to Surrey, so she's not going to get the flick. And I think she's a really good young player. Like we've seen her score 40s, 60s. But to go on and get a big score like that, and obviously set up a phenomenal chase, I think she'll just gain so much confidence from that and really kick on from there because she's been a player that I think a lot of people have been really excited about for a long time, but hasn't really had, the opportunity. I think that's been a challenge with Vipers and Hampshire. You look at players that they've lost, even, like a Paige Schofield or an Alice Monaghan, like those players sort of didn't get a lot of opportunity and then they go somewhere else and get a good run and you can see how good a player they are. And I think Ella will be the same. She'll benefit from having that little bit more consistent opportunity.
Couple of other players to mention. Eve Jones in really good nick for Lancs. She scored 97 and 107 in the last few days. And down at Beckenham yesterday, Alice Capsey was in really good form, 79 off 66 at number 3. We've talked a lot about Capsey and how she's not played a huge amount of 50 over cricket. I was looking at her 50 over record, both domestically and internationally, before yesterday. Internationally, she's played 23 ODIs, but she's batted all over the place. She's never batted more than 5 times in one position. In domestic 50 over cricket, before this year, she'd only played 18 matches, but didn't play a single domestic 50 over game in 2024 and only a handful in 2023. She's only 20 now, so she's basically never had a run in one position in 50 over cricket. And yesterday, 79 was her highest ever professional 50 over score. So I just think that the expectations around her in 50 over cricket have been mad for someone so young who's never got a proper go.
Yeah, I think so. And to be honest, like not even just in 50 over cricket, I think the expectation on her, she's almost like a victim of her own success. You know what I mean? Like in terms of she had that breakout 100 year, and then all of a sudden you're in the WPL, you're in the WBBL, you're in the 100, you're absolutely the poster girl. And then, you don't really get any leeway from then. It's expected that every time you play, you're absolutely tear up trees. And it's just not reality. She's still, like you say, she's still an absolute baby in the infancy of her career. And I just don't think people have given her the wriggle room that she deserves. I think the England A tour really did her a lot of good. I've spoke to her a little bit in that period, and even just spending a lot more time at the crease in that 4-day game, just the ability to know that you can, it's not, you don't face 40 balls and then, after an hour you think, oh, well, job's done. It's actually learning how to bat for a long time. And then you've almost got, like, she played a lot of T20 and now she's getting a little dip of 4-day cricket. It'll help the one in the middle, which is obviously 50 over cricket, because you sort of marry somewhere between the two. But yeah, I think that tour did her the world of good as well. Like the other thing is, like, even just like socially, you're around people that you've grown up playing a lot with, age groups, your Remax and people like that. I know she gets on really well with Izzy Wong. Like there's a comfort in almost coming down a level to go back up. And just like that expectation and that pressure is just turned down a little bit. And I think, yeah, like, I think she's still learning about 50 over cricket. Like that tempo yesterday probably wasn't different to T20, but in your mind it feels different of what you can accept, like in terms of you sort of get 3 or 4 dots in a T20 and you go, right, well, I might use my feet or I might ramp or whatever. Like you're looking to make a move. In 50 over cricket, you can just sit on that and know that you'll get a couple through. So like the actual management of an innings is very different in 50 over cricket. And I think, yeah, like you say, the expectations probably didn't marry the reality. And I think sometimes that can be the case with, I guess, external pressure, media, all those sorts of expectations is really like you get giddy over a young player and expect them to play like that every time they play. And it's reality.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, she was simultaneously an experienced international player at the age of 20, because she's played like 60 times for England, but really inexperienced as a 50 over cricketer, just haven't had a proper run in any one position. Just going to pick out one performance in Tier 2 from Emma Jones, who's a Surrey player on loan at Glamorgan. She's got 147 off 101 deliveries, as Glamorgan fell short just against Middlesex. Speaking of loan spells, Lauren, you're joining Essex. Excited for that? And do you think the loan systems work well in the first year of the new structure?
Yeah, really excited. I think it's great. I think it's working beautifully both ways. It's not just, your players going up, like you've got somebody like Stair playing in Tier 1 and then she'll play for us simultaneously. I think it's great, and I think it's boosted Tier 2 as well in terms of players coming down. You look at somebody like Gibb, who played for Sussex against us and then opened the bowling for Hampshire, and vice versa. I think it's worked really well. It wouldn't have worked any other way, to be perfectly honest, because I think like players want to play Tier 1 cricket. Like for me, like that's probably important playing for Essex in the T20s to build into the 100. And vice versa, in terms of players who aren't getting a run in tier one cricket get the opportunity to play in tier two, which only boosts the standard of tier two. You know, there's still lots of really good cricketers playing in tier two who have been involved in tier one programs for the last 4 or 5 years. You know, no doubt there's some players who haven't been involved in those structures, but there is a lot of players that have been involved in the professional squads. So I think it's worked really well. And like you say, that Emma Jones is a great example of, she's probably like, good luck getting into that Surrey team. And especially when you add Grace Harris into it for the T20s, like that is, it could easily, yeah, it's stacked. It could play internationally easily. So she's not getting, no way, and no way she's getting an opportunity in that Surrey team, and that's nothing against her. But what a great opportunity to then go to Glamorgan and go, hey, I can still play. I'm in good nick. And then you go, oh, if we get an injury, or there's an opportunity that opens up. All right, she got 140 at the weekend. Let's get her in. Whereas if you're carrying drinks, not playing, might drop to the academy, but the academy don't have a lot of fixtures. It's like, well, how do you get back in? Like, how does anything ever change one way or another? So I think it works really well. Obviously, like for me, being able to play tier one, for Stair to be able to play tier one, but also for those players who are crying out for an opportunity to play some cricket somewhere.
I think we can say after the first couple of weeks, very good, not completely perfect, but a good start. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I think it's been a great start for the competition as a whole. Like it's opened up. It's there's no outliers in any league, and I think that's exactly what you want.
Awesome. Well, cheers for your time, Lauren. Catch you next week. Next up, a snippet from Phil Walker's interview with Charlotte Edwards that you can read in full in the next Wisden Cricket Monthly out next week, on what it's like to work with Nat Sciver-Brunt in the WPL with Mumbai Indians.
So Natalie, world-class player, delightful human being, externally quite a self-effacing kind of character. What kind of leadership qualities will she bring to the show?
I think she's going to lead from the front. There's absolutely no doubt about it. She's someone, I think, from a playing point of view, you want to follow. She's quiet. She goes about her business in a certain way, but she has the utmost respect of, I think, the playing group, and I think that's so important.
Obviously, you work with her at Mumbai, and you'd have worked with her elsewhere as well. But do you know her well?
Yeah, and it's been really lovely actually, because she's probably a player I played with, and she's got to see me in a slightly different light in the last 3 years at Mumbai, and to win 2 WPL trophies with her, and her be player of the tournament twice. You do go through a lot with a player, and I've just been really impressed by her leadership qualities. She was vice captain to Harmanpreet Kaur. The way she sort of brought that group together and was a sounding board for Harmanpreet, for me as well, because the messaging that has to go out there. So I've been nothing but been impressed. She will do it in a slightly different way, but that's okay. But she will lead by example, absolutely. And I just think she's in the form of her life.
And she wants it as well, doesn't she? And she's
she
been quite
absolutely
open about
wants
that.
it. Yeah. And I think that's half the battle, isn't it? And she'll no doubt do a fantastic job.
Next up, we've talked a lot about what tiers 1 and 2 look like in the new domestic structure. Tier 3, not so much. Katia Whitney spoke to Sam Dent at Wiltshire ahead of the start of the FA Cup style T20 Cup that starts this weekend, about Wiltshire's situation, including their desire last year to be a Tier 2 county, despite their wider status as a national county.
I'm delighted to have Sam Dent with me, who is the cricket development manager for women and girls cricket at Wiltshire County Cricket Club. We're going to be speaking about what the season's going to look like for Wiltshire women this year in Tier 3, and what that structure below the all singing, all dancing new Tier 1 and 2 first class clubs look like. Firstly, Sam, as a general overview, what does the current women's setup look like at Wiltshire?
Yeah, so we've been really lucky over the last few years that we've actually put a quite a big focus on our women's county cricket, which has been great. So we've got a full squad that trains throughout the winter. But I suppose the big development this year is that we've been able to put a bit more resource into our county women's cricket as well. So this year we've got a squad of 25 players, 8 of which are on our emerging player programme with Glamorgan. We've got 5 academy players with them. And then as a whole squad, we have a whole winter of training that includes strength and conditioning, athlete education, indoor training, and it's becoming quite an exciting programme for the county women.
So just for absolute clarity, this is still amateur status, it's not professional.
Not fully professional, but the class is sort of classed as semi-professional cricket these days. So moving slightly away from amateur cricket, but not fully professional.
And as a club last year, you made an application for Tier 2 status before, obviously, all of this, everything that's happened over the last 12 months happened. What was the backing or thought process behind that application?
Yeah, so within Wiltshire, we're always quite ambitious and with our county programmes, and we thought we're in a really good place with our women and girls structure from both the recreational game, but also as we into county cricket. So we thought we're in a really good position to apply for Tier 2. So we spent a lot of time over the summer putting in a really strong application that included interviews from players, lots of research, some conversations with partners that were going to host some fixtures. Put our application in, really excited to try and move cricket forward in Wiltshire. Unfortunately, the national counties weren't awarded Tier 2 status in the end, but on the back of that, we were able to help the ECB with structuring the Tier 3 competition through consultations, and we think we've got a competition now that's hopefully going to excite our players, the supporters off the pitch, and hopefully there'll be future opportunities for us to look at Tier 2 over the coming years.
But was there much communication beforehand about whether national counties would be considered for Tier 2? Because obviously when that list came out, it was very clear that the first class counties were prioritised for the reasons we see now, like double headers and 2-team, 1-club kind of stuff with the men's team. Was there much communication beforehand about the likelihood of that bid being successful?
So we knew at the start of the process that national counties weren't going to get the opportunity for Tier 1, which is fully understandable. And then at the time, we applied for Tier 2 alongside the other first class counties that weren't awarded Tier 1. So at that time, we thought it was a pretty open process, which is great. And I think there was 9 national counties that applied for Tier 2 in the end. On the back of that, there was some conversations that were had around sort of I suppose the commercial side of the game, being able to support what needs to happen in Tier 2. So the decisions were made then that national counties would go into Tier 3, which at the time was quite disappointing for us. And we still want to be really ambitious. So we are working towards sort of Tier 2 standards as best we can within our budgets. But I think the way it's worked out is actually the Tier 3 competition looks quite exciting for this year. We can still be ambitious. We do want to try and move towards that Tier 2 in future if that opportunity presents itself in the next sort of round. But actually, for this year, we're really excited for Tier 3.
We don't know yet whether that structure will be opened up again for the rejig of Tier 1 or 2 sides, but we do know that I think that it won't be until at least 2029, or at least that's where the current plan runs to. How do you measure your progress in that time if it's unclear whether you will even get that opportunity to move up to Tier 2?
Yeah, so we're not sure what the process looks like in future at the moment, but from our point of view in Wiltshire, we still want to show lots of ambition. So we're given sort of some Tier 3 standards that we need to meet, which include sort of the backroom processes that we go through. So we're working through those quite nicely at the moment. And then as a county, we're actually going to start working through some of the Tier 2 standards as well, which go a little bit above and beyond what's expected at Tier 3, and include some additional parts of that. So it might be, for example, some fixtures, we need some physio support. So actually, we've already started on that within Wiltshire this year. So all of our games will have some physios for our county women. There'll be some additional requirements in terms of kit supplied for players, and the amount of training, the staff that are around to support the players as well. So actually, there's a lot more that goes with it. So as a county, we're working towards those over the next few years, in the hope that if the opportunity does present itself in 2028, 2029, we can evidence that we're delivering a lot of it already on a limited budget. And actually, that should put us in good stead for any applications that we're able to go through.
I think you mentioned an increase in your budget towards the women's team for this year. Where does that increase come from to meet these standards for Tier 2?
Yeah, so the budget allocated to Tier 2 and Tier 3 is very different from the ECB. So each of the counties are awarded a different budget. Within Wiltshire, we're given a set budget that we can work to that sort of supports our cricket. It's not, I suppose, not big enough to support having new roles in place for staff, but actually it does allow us to do a little bit more. So we have been able to introduce a full winter of strength and conditioning for our players. We've run a winter program, and then through partners and additional sponsorship that we've been able to secure through Eden Renewables and Southern Academy of Sport, we've been able to add in some athlete education. Gray Nichols has helped us supply some additional kit as well, which has been brilliant. And then on top of that, we've been able to go and find some physio support. And we've also got budget through our sponsorship to get some live streaming and video analysis done as well. So that's all sort of been done off our own back in terms of sponsorship, which has been great through the support of our friends and partners. And actually, that's going to really help us drive towards those tier 2 standards over the next few years as well.
And how much of that as well is meeting facility standards, so the facilities of these first class hubs, which must be, as a national county, pretty hard to compete with?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, facilities is definitely one of our biggest challenges. We were really fortunate in our tier 2 application that we had a conversation with Marlborough College, who had offered to support us a lot throughout our tier 2 process, which unfortunately, as we know, we didn't get successfully. But they have been brilliant at helping us with a venue over the winter for our indoor training, and they're going to host a couple of games this summer. And then as a national county, we're also really fortunate that we've got a brilliant club network, really close working relationships with all of our clubs that are superb. So all of our games this year are hosted at some fantastic grounds, really high quality pitches. The outfields are brilliant. The hospitality we get at those clubs is superb as well. So we're actually really looking forward to the fact that we can take our county women's cricket across the county and make it accessible for everybody, which I think is an advantage for counties like Wiltshire, where actually the travel can be a little bit challenging. So if we can take our games to people across the county, that we see that as a bit of an advantage compared to having a single home, which would be great in the future. But for now, it's about providing opportunity for the players and for supporters to come and watch some cricket.
And just pulling back slightly, how did the regional system before it's been disbanded serve you as a club? Because I think we've tended to focus on how it affected the first class counties and the players within that top level of system. But obviously these regions covered large areas pretty equally, or were meant to. So there was feeder systems into that regional hub. And it's also good to remember for listeners that national counties have historically and still do play a greater part in the women's domestic setup than they do in the men's domestic setup in terms of player production and development. And there's historically been a lot less separation between first class counties and national counties in the women's domestic game. What were your feelings around the regional system being disbanded and how it was going to change things for Wiltshire?
The last few years has been quite good for us as well as a county. So we, as Wiltshire, have been really supported by Western Storm, as it was known. We had quite a heavy involvement with them, so I was really fortunate to coach on their EPP and academy programs. We had a lot of our players that were involved with their programs as well. So actually, as a county within the regional structure, it worked pretty well for us. The big challenge for us as a Southwest was just the journey times and the travel. So there was quite frequent occurrences where our players were travelling over 2 to 3 hours to get to some fixtures or some training events, and they might have only been 2 to 3 hours long. So actually, travel became quite a challenge, and it would be the same for other national counties. So again, Cornwall was in the same region as Wiltshire, so trying to provide an opportunity for players that's fair and equal for players all across that region was challenging. So I think there's been a bit of progress in the fact that it's a bit more localised now. Our new sort of catchment area still includes Glamorgan, Gloucestershire and Wiltshire, so we still do have quite a bit of travel, particularly for the girls that are located in Salisbury that may be travelling to Cardiff. But actually the actual region has shrunk down a little bit for us, so there is a bit more of an opportunity and less travel, which is great. But like I said, we had a big involvement with Western Storm. Lots of our players were involved. Their coaches fully supported our programmes and came along to observe sessions, did some observations at fixtures. So actually it worked pretty well for us. But I'm conscious that might not have been the case across the country. And each county will have very different stories about how the previous regional system worked, and depending on where they were located and how their structure is set up.
Was it 8 Wiltshire players in Western Storm set up by the end of the regional system, did you say? Or
Yes, yeah, and similar going through. So I think we had 8 in total, but a couple more over the years that sort of went in and out. This going into this year, similar type of stuff. So we've got 8 girls on our EPP and 5 in the Glamorgan Academy as well. So slightly more this year because of the way that we're able to host a local EPP program or an emerging player program that's supported by Glamorgan within Wiltshire. Whereas previously the emerging player program under the Western Storm banner would have been hosted somewhere in Taunton or Bristol that our players would have had to travel to. So a slight change there, which gives a bit more opportunity and equally more girls involved, which is brilliant.
And what does this year look like for you as Wiltshire women? What competitions, and we know about the County Cup and that's going to have tiers 1, 2 and 3, but beyond that, what are the competitions and the matches that you'll be playing?
Yeah, so Wiltshire women this year are in Tier 3 Division 1. So Tier 3 is slightly different in that it's split into 2 divisions for both the 50 over and the T20 competition. So we're really lucky that we get to play against counties that we perhaps haven't played before. They go outside of our region. So this Sunday we're playing Cheshire, who we don't tend to come up against too often. So that's quite exciting. And within Tier 3, there's a promotion relegation as well for both the 50 over competition and the T20 competition. So a really good opportunity for our team to apply themselves with a bit of an incentive, I suppose, at the end of the season to try and finish top of the table, but also with that relegation opportunity in there as well. So something that's not been, I suppose, in women's county cricket before, and goes alongside any knockout competitions that we've got too.
And we've mentioned the County Cup. That feels like a really exciting opportunity. You've got Oxfordshire, I think, in the first round. And then if you were to win that one, it would be another Tier 3 side in the second round, which is the round where the Tier 2 sides enter. That feels like a pretty good draw and a big opportunity to get quite far in that competition.
Yeah, we're really excited actually about the County Cup. So Oxfordshire in round 1, who we've played in previous years. So we're looking forward to that one as a bit of a local match, which is great to start the season. As you said, round 2 becomes against another Tier 3 county, which again is really exciting and should give us another really good competition on that round 2. But I suppose the really exciting part of the County Cup for any of those teams that we potentially come up against in rounds 1 and 2 actually get to play against the Blaze in round 3, who come in at the later stage. So that's a really exciting opportunity hopefully for us to progress to Tier 3 and allow some of our players to play against some very experienced professional cricketers. Who knows what happens after that? If we can pull off a great result against the Blaze, who knows? But it'd be a really good opportunity to get to round 3 at least, or any of the Tier 3 counties that we come up against in round 1 and 2.
And you mentioned the different counties and the promotion relegation Division 1, that kind of thing. In terms of volume of cricket and volume of matches, how does that differ or equivalent to last year and the previous system that you would have been playing?
Yeah, so just the quantity of cricket definitely is improved. So I remember a couple of years back, the only structured competition that the county women had was a T20 competition, with the final, I think, was being played on the 8th of May. So by mid-May, the actual structured competition for county women had finished, which seems really bizarre to think about as we go into this year. Previous years, we did have some additional friendlies that were organised within county women's structures, so they did play throughout the year. But like I said, structured competitions finished by mid-May. So this year's really exciting in that the T20s, the 50 overs and the knockout cups sort of align with the professional game. So we go through a 50 over phase, a T20 phase, and back to 50 overs again, which is brilliant. And it's set out all the way throughout the summer. So there's constant regular opportunities for our county women to play fixtures, all within structured competitions, to complement all the club cricket they're playing and various other cricket they're having opportunities to be involved with.
And most people in this new structure will be following mostly the Tier 1 and 2 sides because those will be the ones that are televised and pushed to the front. But why should we also keep an eye on Tier 3 and what should we be looking out for?
Yeah, so I think Tier 3 is quite an exciting division as well. We certainly see a lot of young players coming through Tier 3. So like I've mentioned before, we've got some EPP players and some academy girls within our squad. The academy girls are in the fortunate position in that they'll be playing for both Wiltshire throughout the summer, but also have the opportunity to play for Tier 2 teams as well. So there'll be a little bit of up and down movement. Most of those are looking to go on to professional contracts in the future. So when Glamorgan become Tier 1 in 2027, hopefully those girls are in a really good position to progress into professional contracts. So Tier 3 is a really good opportunity to see their journey as a young players, but equally we see some fantastic experienced players within that county competition that we have been involved with county women's cricket for a number of years. It's a great opportunity for them to provide local cricket. And there might be some talent in there that potentially hasn't been discovered yet. So it's a really nice opportunity to see counties from across the country that have found some young talent, some experienced talent, players returning to the game. So there's a variety of players within that competition. And I think that creates a really exciting place to watch cricket. And it definitely feels a bit more local and a bit more achievable for players within national counties. So certainly one of our aims is to inspire some of the younger girls in Wiltshire to pick up a bat and a ball for the first time. And I think that's a real powerful message that we can send through Tier 3 cricket.
Well, good luck for the start of the season, Sam, and I'm sure we'll catch up at some point in the future as well.
Thank you.
Ben, there's a tri-series between South Africa, Sri Lanka and India happening in Sri Lanka. At the time of recording, India are 2 from 2, with Pratika Rawal top scoring in both games. Who is Rawal? What's she done so far?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting story, actually, because she's, when you hear, oh, there's a new India batter breaking records, you expect to look at it and see like, oh God, that is frighteningly young, basically. That's what you expect when you go onto the player profile. Talk about 14-year-olds and, even in India, you obviously have Shafali Verma, that kind of thing. She's actually taken a bit of the longer route round to this amazing start. So she's 24 years old, which is not old by any means, but by the modern standards, she's a veteran. And there was an interesting piece on Cricinfo interviewing her and talking about, the kind of path she's taken. So, developing her technique. Sure, she said she learned to punch off the back foot, having basically not even known that was a shot you could play at one point, which I guess is actually an interesting point as well about the difference between the top level cricket and further down, when you can just play everything on the front foot and you realise you can't do that and you have to learn how to do it. But she also, worked on things like, she said she was quite short-tempered before, even working on how fast she spoke, which is something that I could maybe do with work on at some points as well. So it's a really, really interesting story, and also interesting because she hasn't played in the WPL yet, and actually the last WPL auction was the day after she was picked in an India squad for the first time, and even that there was no franchise that was like, oh, let's take a punt on that new player. I think part of that is probably because she really impressed the India selectors in like a training camp rather than in domestic cricket, so perhaps there's a few less scouts around. She's also not yet shown that she's a massive power player that doesn't have to be a barrier if you can score runs with the consistency she has, which we'll get to now. But like that consistency is basically unprecedented. So she's crossed 500 runs in her first 8 ODIs. That's the fastest by any woman, beating Charlotte Edwards' record. She's currently on a run of 5 consecutive 50s. The only players ever to make a longer streak are Mitali Raj, Lindsay Reeler and Charlotte Edwards. I'll just read out her scores from the start for her debut. So she goes 40, 76, 18, and then the start of that 5-match run, 89, 67, 154, 50 not out, and 78. And then the first 6 of those games were against West Indies and Ireland. So you might say that perhaps she, that she has something to prove. But Sri Lanka are obviously a decent side. And then the 78 was against South Africa, and actually a game South Africa came pretty close to winning. So she's very, very exciting.
And she's also not actually scoring that slowly. I sort of expected, seeing that she hadn't played in the WPL yet, she must be striking at 65, 70. But she's striking at 92. And I know that the caveat there is that, as you say, she's playing against 2 teams that haven't qualified for the World Cup later in the year. But against Africa, she's striking at 85 from the top of the order, and actually compares pretty favourably to the other Indian players who had a decent hit in that game. I suppose we were talking before we started recording that actually, does the size of the WPL actually mean that you could be a really, really good Indian player, and as proven by Rawal, either close to or in the India setup, and not get a contract or get a starting berth in the WPL just because of how few teams there are, and actually how many of the overseas slots are used on all-rounders, batters, and also India's first team strength in batters, if that makes sense. There aren't actually that many spots available for people not in the India team to get an opportunity batting the top 5 in a WPL team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of the squads are just literally full international squads, aren't they, in the WPL? And there are international players who don't get a go. So that's definitely part of it as well. I mean, you'd fancy someone would have a go for her next year, and especially also I think that you talk about the strike rate. It was interesting looking through that her first innings in international cricket was quite a slow 40, a strike rate of below 60 against West Indies, and I think she's actually developing that game as she builds through her work in cricket. That was one of the things that you take from the interview, is that she's somebody who clearly thinks a lot about the game, about how to improve herself, about the right mental state and that sort of thing. And so you would expect her to sort of add those things to her game as needed. And I think that's something that if a WPL side were to take a punt on her, you could almost see like, okay, well, we have a player who might not be exactly the finished article in T20 cricket now, but we've seen evidence that she can improve, and we've seen evidence that she can be ridiculously consistent. So if she adds this one little thing, then she's a proper force to be reckoned with, kind of thing.
Other notable performance from this series, Tasmin Britt hit 109 off 107 in a losing cause in that game. you were talking about, and more generally, it just feels like quite good World Cup preparation. World Cup in the subcontinent later in the year, and all these 3 teams getting serious practice. They'll each play 4 games against high quality opposition, and then there's a final for the top 2 teams. So it's a very good series to have so close to a 50 over World Cup. Cheers, Ben. That's everything for today's show. Cheers, listeners. We'll be back towards the end of next week.